Man, what an episode of NXT last night. A lot of times I love watching NXT. It's showing the stars of the future today, but I tell you what, last night's episode of NXT felt a little bit different. We had a lot of surprise appearances and a great main event towards the end. We're going to jump all into it here on today's video. My name is Ramos Jr., fan of pro wrestling, a channel of pro wrestling for pro wrestling fans. Hopefully everyone's doing great. Hopefully the week has great stuff ahead for you guys. We're talking about NXT. One of the biggest notes coming out of this episode, of course, was the debut of Ricky Starks. We saw him make his debut on last week's episode of NXT, and it was weird. There was a lot of times where it's like they were purposely avoiding saying his name. That either, led us to believe one of two things. Either one, it's going to be this huge thing where it's finally revealed that, hey, Ricky Starks is keeping his name, or that ultimately we would have a name change. And that's what we saw. Had a great promo in the ring with Ava as he was signing his contract, was interrupted by Ethan Page, shout out to AEW, and then as well as Wes Lee. Ricky Starks seemed like he never missed a step. On top of his game, knew what the assignment was, established himself as a star in NXT. He has this aura around him. In terms of the roster in NXT, you can see a little bit of a difference. He has that level of experience. He has that confidence. All we need to see is him go in the ring. Had his altercation with Wes Lee and Ethan Page, and ultimately it was revealed that his name is now Ricky Saints. An homage, a shout out to his home of New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a fan of it. It's not something too crazy, different than Ricky Starks. He had an interview with Bully Ray on Busted Open Radio, and he referred to it as like it would have been crazy if it was like Ricky Genevieve, but now it's Ricky Saints. On brand, talking about where he came from, as well as pretty close to Ricky Starks. Will it take some time to get used to? Sure, but I think over time it'll fit just well. It's also a signal of what's to come. Something different, something fresh for Ricky. We've only known him from the wide, spread media from AEW. That's where he did a lot of his work on TV. And now we're going to get to see him on NXT, see what he has against the likes of an Ethan Page, of a Wes Lee, because he will be in a tag team match with his partner, Javon Evans, this upcoming episode. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are looking forward to it. Comment down below your thoughts on Ricky Saints, the new name of the latest star to sign with NXT. But it wasn't the only surprise appearance that we saw on this week's episode. The opener showed Obafemi, the conquering NXT champion, successfully defending his title against Grayson Waller and Austin Theory this past weekend at Vengeance Day. But the big question was, who were the men that attacked Obafemi? They also attacked Fraxium, so we'll get to them in a bit. But who were these mystery men that attacked Obafemi? Why are they doing this? What is their reasoning? Why are they doing it? And who are they? Oba wanted answers. We wanted answers. But ultimately, that's not what happened. You see, Obafemi calls them out, and they're not the ones that answer the call. Total nonstop action. TNA Wrestling's X Division champion, Moose, finally makes his long-awaited debut on NXT. Since we've had these crossover appearances between TNA and NXT, Moose has always been one of those names where it's like, when are we going to get to see him make the jump? When are we going to get to see him cross the line? I think it couldn't have came at a better time with Obafemi as the NXT champion. These are two behemoths of men. Big, strong boys. The NXT champion. The X Division champion. It's a classic tale of Kong and Godzilla, two titans meeting for a huge clash. When will the match take place? Maybe Stand and Deliver. There's also an upcoming show prior to Stand and Deliver. So we'll have to wait and see. But regardless, it was very interesting. It was refreshing to see someone the caliber of Moose. We've seen other great stars. We recently just saw JDC. But someone like Moose, a multiple time champion in TNA, one of the standard flag bearers of that brand, to make the jump over to NXT, lends a lot of credibility to this partnership, to the crossover. Moose will be defending the TNA X Division Championship next week on NXT against Lexis King. That'll be an interesting matchup. I think the result is not in doubt. I think we can all tell who will emerge victorious from that matchup. But nonetheless, something new is something exciting. NXT is on a roll. And speaking of a roll, Fraxium, the tag team champions, from a makeshift tag team to arguably the best tag team in the world. They've been laying it out on the line every time they enter the ring, having fantastic matches against any opponent. And so when it was that the No Quarter Catch crew came over to discuss possible business with them, they were under the assumption that, hey, you want a tag team title match, you got to earn it. And they said, you know what? No, you're not the champs we're looking for. They issue a challenge to the TNA World Tag Team Champions, Matt and Jeff, the Hardys. Huge. The last time we saw the Hardys, it's been years. You'd have to go all the way back to pre-pandemic, the last time we saw the Hardys together in the WWE. But it is set for next week. No Quarter Catch crew versus the Hardys, the TNA World Tag Team Champions, the TNA X Division Champion, all under one roof. And it's going to be in NXT. Can't wait. The Hardys, one of, if not, the greatest tag team of all time. If you're familiar with the channel, you know I think very highly of the Hardys. They're probably my favorite tag team of all time. I have two, really. My favorite tag team of all time, probably the Hardys. Matt and Jeff, so influential with their style, so influential with their characters, as well as just the presentation of the Hardys. Who doesn't love the Hardys? Aside from them, I've always said that the Dudley Boys have to be in consideration as well. One of the most prolific tag teams of all time, having won dozens and dozens of tag team titles together. But I digress. The Hardy Boys make another appearance at NXT. It's going to be great. And we're talking about tag teams. We're going to talk about the main event. The main event was stacked, right? The women's division, as we've always known, one of the best women's divisions in all of pro wrestling. But it was Fatal Influence versus the makeshift team of Jordynne Grace, former TNA Knockout, now a member of the NXT roster, teaming up with the NXT North American champion, Stephanie Vaquer, and the NXT champion, Giulia. I mean, you look at that big three. Wow. The division's in really good hands. Of course, the babyfaces go over, having a fantastic matchup against the heels, but I take a look at the future of NXT. Giulia, Stephanie, Jordynne Grace. Loaded, top to bottom. You can even see a moment there towards the end where Jordynne Grace is kind of eyeing each championship of her respective partners. It begs the question, not if she's going to get a championship match, but when. Because it's going to happen. And she's going to leave with some sort of gold. But that's for another time. That's for another time. We have to enjoy it. I saw somewhere on Twitter that there was a post about the big three, right? That this is Sean's big three of Giulia, Stephanie, Jordynne, in comparison to Triple H's big three when he was in NXT, which was Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, and Io Shirai, now known as Io Sky. The women's division is in fantastic hands. It's getting a little bit crowded, per se. I think we're going to start seeing some more call-ups onto the main roster following WrestleMania 41, because you want to be able to develop other women. There's other people like Lola Vice, Jada Parker, Carmen Petrovich, who haven't really been in the championship hunt consistently. We know Carmen is going to get her title match up against Stephanie next week, suffering that attack from Fatal Influence. We're going to have to see in what state she's in. But nonetheless, NXT delivers another excellent episode. Big fan of what they're doing. But I want to hear from you guys, the fans. What do you think of NXT? What were your thoughts of Moose's appearance? The Hardy Boys coming next week. Ricky Saints with his new name. And of course, Jordynne Grace and her future in the women's division. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, comment down below your thoughts and questions, as well as subscribe to the channel for more wrestling content such as this one. And of course, my name is Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining us in today's video, and we'll see you in the next one.